Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Manufacturing IT podcast. I'm joined today by Filip Popov from Wizata. Welcome, Filip.
Hey, Dan. A pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure, Filip. And look, good to have the conversation here. I know you were recently honored to make the Analytica Top 50 Influencers in Industry 4.0. So look, kudos to you for breaking onto the list.
Thank you very much. That was quite a surprise. In fact, funny story. I think I was at a beach in Brazil when I got the news. And my phone started exploding with notifications in LinkedIn. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah, that's cool. Well, look, it's a distinguished list. So look, kudos to you for making it on there.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm quite honored to be on the list with all the rest of the giants in the industry.
Yeah. Well, look, please share a little bit of an insight into who you are, Filip, who Wizata are, and kind of how you made it to the top 50.
Sure, fair enough. So I go as officially I'm a digital expert. That's at least what it says on my LinkedIn profile, which is really just a more romantic way to say that I work in the business development of Wizata. My role with Wizata is to increase our market as well as launch projects and set up the foundation for starting the projects of implementing AI in manufacturing, which is what Wizata does, right? We work with manufacturing companies on helping them get value out of their data by leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning through our platform.
No, super relevant at the moment. Obviously, everybody's seeing the super bounce of, you know what I'm going to say, ChatGPT and introduction for that. So how did you get into kind of the area of, AI machine learning for manufacturing? Was it a natural progression, or was it something that, like most of us tripped and fell and found this great place?
A very good question. So it was a natural progression, but the step before was sort of something I fell into. So I came actually from a manufacturing world. I worked with a group which was a tier 3 supplier for automotive industry, agricultural, pharmaceutical, you name it. And they had a bunch of CNC machines as well as laser cutters, mills, turning machines, and so on, creating pieces for a tier 2 and tier 1 suppliers of the aforementioned industries. And I worked in the sales department trying to find clients that would be interested in such services. And at that point, and I was visiting a lot of plants, trying to see what their need, as well as our own plan, and so on and so forth. And I really wanted to move into having seen where the world is going in terms of the technologies that were coming out, and kind of being a geek and a nerd myself, I wanted to move more into a digital sphere, what I thought was more elegant, if you will. Yeah. And that's how I kind of came into Wizata, which is more Industry 4.0 of the next step, let's say, in industry development.
That makes sense. And so, look, which industries do Wizata focus or get the most, success? And how are you finding that sector?
Sure. So, Wizata has its roots in raw materials industry. Okay. Specifically in steel. Yeah. And mining, but since then we've moved into cement, limestone. This year we're putting a lot of effort into moving in food and beverage. But in reality, we are not married to any one industry. Okay. For what's important for us, or rather, the clients that can benefit most from our technology are those that have continuous production and the continuous flow of data. So apart from the industries I've mentioned, there's also chemical industry, utilities. We've also worked on projects in solar panel, as well as, and there's also paper industry and so on. I think I covered the biggest ones, but that's pretty much what Wizata the spheres that Wizata kind of moves around in.
No, good. And from those spheres you mentioned, is there specific industries that you feel are taking to AI and machine learning at a quicker user adoption rate? And equally, are there some that are maybe more resistant to that change, or maybe more cautious on the advancement of AI within their processes?
That's a very good question. And it's a little bit of a mixed bag. So when we're talking about these industries, we're talking about industries that are very long lasting, that have existed for a very long time. And they're doing their job largely very well.
Yeah.
They've reached pretty high levels of efficiency. So where AI helps them is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. We're talking about industries that are just very shy off of, well, never 100%, but very shy off of 99%. And so because they are so well developed and long lasting, they are a little bit resistant to things or claims that something can improve upon this, right? For good reason. Any changes, that is a big risk, because any kind of an issue that might occur during the process would cost huge amounts of money. Yeah. So to that end, they're a little bit cautious. I wouldn't even call it slow to change, but they are slow to change, but out of caution.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's what I would say. And then there are some, I wouldn't use a broad stroke to say there are some industries that are at least not in the ones that I've mentioned that are ahead compared to the other ones. There's just maybe some sites or regions that are a little bit more advanced than others.
And what drives that, Filip? Is it, leadership that are kind of maybe at a different vantage points, or is it, a need to change? What makes some kind of regions or plants kind of more susceptible to taking AI and bringing AI into their facilities?
Sure. There's probably multiple factors, but there's the one that I would identify, both internal and external. So an internal factor would be what you mentioned, leadership, right? Yeah. Motivation is a big part, and how motivated a company is to launch such a project will really depend on the leadership and people that are championing this kind of change. Yeah. Right. And the external factor is, of course, the things that are happening outside of the company that might be causing additional costs to its operating. So the increase of prices of raw materials, the increase of prices of energy, legislation regarding sustainability and environment. So these things kind of work together, and if they puzzle one into another, then you have a very good foundation to launch and deploy a project like this.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I guess, we work with, from my perspective, we work with companies that sell, a range of different industry 4.0 technologies. And one of the really exciting ones that we're seeing at the moment is kind of low code, no code type platforms. And the cool thing from what I'm hearing and seeing is that a lot of the companies, like you mentioned, have been running for a long time. They're already very optimized, very efficient. And, people like yourself are having to, to provide a proof of value, proof of concept. And, there's only a small scope of concept that you can provide on that perspective. What are some of the kind of use cases for bringing AI into a manufacturing facility? And I know that might sound like a basic question, Filip, but look, super curious to understand some of the kind of use cases of where AI can be useful. It's a buzzword everyone's hearing now. So yeah, getting some understanding from you on kind of use cases for AI would be great.
Sure, absolutely. So really the focus of AI implementation in the manufacturing industry is, in a very umbrella term, is to optimize the production. But really what it comes down to is to reduce costs. Yeah. And the way you reduce costs, some of the more popular ways, some of the more low-hanging fruit is maintenance. Yeah. So maintenance, and this is a much broader term than a machine breaking down. Again, these companies are pretty good in maintaining their machines and their assets as well, right? But the AI offers an additional next step. So up until now, the golden standard was condition monitoring and scheduled maintenance. Right, so you'll do it every month, every 2 months, whatever your key asset might be. Imagine a big kiln, a big furnace, or what have you, that costs, I don't know, millions and lasts 40, 50 years. You want to make sure that that's running 24/7, and that's why sometimes you will over-maintain it. You will have spare parts in your inventory more than you need. You will have multiple people more people than you need attending to it, et cetera, et cetera. And even so, you might have something called an unplanned failure, right? Something that came from left field, you don't know what happened. So where AI comes in is it takes all of the condition monitoring, all the data, correlates with each other. We're talking about thousands of data points coming in, well, depending on the asset, at varying speeds, somewhere between milliseconds, seconds, hours, or minutes, right? And compares all these, and using algorithms and models, predicts when the next failure will be, right?
Yeah.
And as well as provides in the next step, provides recommendations on how to avoid it.
No,
sorry, and this is how you can plan better in your resources, both in terms of people as well as spare parts, as well as your production, because you might have to turn it on to exchange stuff off to change spare parts. So maintenance would be one thing, and the other thing would be, let's say, quality, which also kind of feeds into environmental goals as well.
Yeah.
Because by increasing your quality, you decrease the amount of waste because you don't scrap the same amount of end product as you used to. You don't have to rework the product if it's even reworkable, and you therefore don't have to spend more energy on it. So there's less waste, less energy expenditure, and also makes for a happy customer at the end of the day because they get a better quality product at a decreased lead time, if you will.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So maintenance and quality, they're the two kind of core areas where AI can really kind of improve for manufacturers. The way you described it there, and look, I appreciate I'm not running a factory, I'm not running a manufacturing facility, but it sounds like a really straightforward reason for bringing AI into a factory. What's the challenge you normally kind of run into with talking about starting some of these pilot projects? What would be some of the resistance that you might face?
There's a number of things. So starting from the fact that sometimes the factories that I'm talking to might have outdated equipment. That equipment might not be as connected as one would like in order for a streamlined process data. They might already be having some legacy systems that are siloed one away from another, and the company already has what people would say too many screens to work with. Why would they need another one?
Yeah.
And that would be from technical point of views. And then a big one is the ROI is not immediately clear, right? Okay. And the way that it can be cleared out is if there's a certain level of transparency, but given the fact that oftentimes this is the first time you're talking to the factory, they don't have it, and people are in these industries are very protective of their data for good reason. It's not something that you can easily put into numbers, right? So there's a level. So the way we mitigate that typically in industry is we break it down into smaller chunks, starting with a proof of concept or a trial, so that we provide value quickly, and we onboard other stakeholders, and we have a clearer picture because we have a clearer picture of the return on investment at that point. So those would be some of the challenges and blockers.
No, that makes sense. And I guess those kind of smaller pilot projects, improving value is obviously paramount, but I guess classically getting stuck in that pilot purgatory, that's probably, one of the challenges and things that we can run into on that journey. So that makes sense.
For sure.
Just want to evolve that point then. So what are kind of some of the key tools and that can enable AI integration into manufacturing? Obviously ChatGPT, we're seeing roles advertised for prompt engineer, crazy things, but maybe to strip it back, Filip, what are some of the kind of tools that enable AI integration into manufacturing?
Sure. Well, that's pretty much where I live, right?
Okay.
That's my area. So Wizata is the type of tool, and there's other tools on the market as well. that allow for AI integration within the manufacturing industry. We're talking about, at least in case of Wizata, we're talking about a hybrid solution. So both utilizing cloud and edge solution, which makes for a easily scalable solution, because oftentimes we're talking about factories that have more than one production line and even more than one facility, right? So instead of spending 6 months to a year on developing a solution, a custom-made solution on one production line, and then the same amount of time on another, and then another, what we do is we templatize, and then we drastically shorten the time that it takes us to replicate and scale.
Yes. Okay.
So, and one of the things that you mentioned at the very beginning is that what's important. You said low code solutions. This is something that's I think going to be happening more. We're going to be seeing more and more on the market, right? AI is or utilizing or creating, let's say, modeling, as we say, new machine learning algorithms is reserved to people that know data science quite well, right?
Yeah.
Whereas we have many stakeholders within a factory that might want to utilize and get benefit from an AI tool. So the whole idea is to democratize sort of the user experience, or when it comes to these platforms, and make them as easy. The learning curve is is easier to adopt as possible for people of varied backgrounds.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the keys, isn't it? Moving away from these huge monolithic systems where there's tons of services, tons of customizations needed, but to that kind of more agile, user-friendly type interface. And obviously that ties in with a younger generation entering the workforce, a more kind of digitally native workforce. So that makes sense. So in terms of kind of AI and artificial intelligence and all of the tools around that, Filip, who typically within a kind of manufacturing plant would be, the people that would be running these pilot projects, or who would you be, maybe speaking to and making aware of some of the proof of concepts that Wizata can provide?
Sure. So typically the people we talk to are, so actually let me rewind. Recently, I've seen more and more in the market, specifically positions that are specifically designated to run these projects. Typically they're head of digitalization or head of AI projects, or it comes in different names and forms and shapes. But these are people that are brought in on a team and whose sole responsibility is to look at the process as it is, look at the existing systems and tools that exist, and the ones available, and compare to ones available in the market, and see whether there's a gap that needs bridging that would ultimately result in some kind of benefit for the company, right?
Yeah.
Especially or an edge, competitive edge.
Yeah.
Where these positions have not been assigned or designated, typically the people that we're talking to will depend on the problem that we're solving, right?
Yeah.
If we're talking about quality, we're talking to the production process manager or a COO, sometimes a CTO. If we're talking about maintenance, it's head of maintenance, head of reliability, and people in maintenance and reliability and assets health departments, right?
Yeah.
So this is the people that we're often most talking to, and the people that are driving the projects within their respective organizations.
No, really interesting to hear that. And I guess, one of the things I was kind of curious on, and at the speed of change at the moment and adoption, are these type of projects reserved for companies with super deep pockets? And are you finding that it's the big companies, Filip, that are keen to make these changes, or, getting better returns for smaller companies more beneficial?
Oh, very good question, actually. So until, I would say, when I say recently, I mean 10 years ago, this has been reserved only for larger companies with deeper pockets, with R&D departments that you really can work in cutting edge technology and develop new things. as of in the past 10 years, and we're definitely going to see more and more of that. The cost of we'll also see new partners, but the cost of existing solutions is going down because first of all, on the side of us vendors, the SME market is very attractive, and on the side of the industry, there are benefits that smaller companies can definitely reap by using this technology, and they need solutions that are affordable for them, or rather the ones that they come at a pricing that would justify the cost, or rather there's an ROI, and that are easy to implement and that are easy to use, because again, they don't have huge teams with CTOs and data scientists and huge IT departments and so on and so forth. And on that topic, it was the beginnings of these types of technologies were kind of internal, right? Big companies were investing in this kind of R&D to develop it for their own use, and now we're seeing companies from outside developing solutions that they specialize specifically in these types of solutions. They're not necessarily engineers or not necessarily come from the specific industry, but they specialize in developing this type of software that are providing something that comes at a much lower cost than if you were developing it in-house.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And look, we talk about, the people's background, and look, I run manufacturing IT recruitment, and we focus on recruitment of Industry 4.0 professionals. And we work with vendors, we work with manufacturers. And often, when we're talking about people who operate in this, convergence of IT, OT, having that operational background, manufacturing background, understand process, understand how a plant works, but also then people who understand technology now, we're seeing that convergence is greater. So from your experience, what type of background is required for somebody to get the most juice from the squeeze with AI within their manufacturing?
Sure. So what we're seeing right now, well, at least when I say we, I mean me predominantly.
I know, I do that as well.
Royal we.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing more recently is that there is an increase in demand in people with background in data science and data engineering.
Yeah.
Right. So, and they will be some of the profiles that would be using such tools. Not only, but they would use it from a different perspective. They don't need necessarily a very easy to use platform because they talk in code, right? But they will be taking it to another level and finding ways to apply it in quite imaginative ways. Because another benefit that I've mentioned, that I forgot to mention in AI integration, is that it can provide sometimes additional streams of revenue, right?
Yeah.
So these are the types of backgrounds that are becoming more and more kind of popular within industry, certainly. That's what I would say.
That makes sense. And look, I guess one of the questions I always like to put to people who are providing, solutions and conceptual improvements to manufacturers is, what's the 3 best ways, or that somebody could maybe fail on their implementation project? We always hear and read, 3 top tips to improve this by 5%, or 3 top tips to do X, Y, and Z. But, what are some of the ways that somebody could guarantee failure on their, say, AI project within manufacturing? What are the pitfalls that you've seen and some of the banana skins that people have treaded on?
Very good question. I think the top 3 is difficult, but I have some on top of my head that I think are valuable. The number 1 I would put is not knowing your why.
Yeah.
You can fall into a trap of getting a tool or starting a project, an AI project or what have you, digitalization project, but not knowing really why you're doing it, as opposed to succumbing to the peer pressure, if you will, right? It's a sexy topic. Everyone's doing it. Our neighbors or our competitors are doing it. So I guess we must do it.
Yeah.
But knowing your why is very important. And then the second point is kind of an extension of that. Defining your KPIs is also very important. It might be difficult at the very get-go, and that shouldn't be something that should break the project necessarily if you don't have a very clear, but you should have a good, but you should have a good idea of what it is. And the third one, something I find very frustrating personally in my position, there is a certain level of prestige that comes with branding. And companies will start projects which are very expensive. They will commit to very long projects and very long contracts, vendor locking, if you will. And they might know their whys very well and their KPIs very well. And then they'll look at a solution like Wizata and look at the pricing and the timing that it would take for us to deploy such a project, and then sort of look at each other and you can see them just fall apart. You know, imagine and if they're the ones that launched the project, they were responsible for committing to the previous project with a very expensive vendor. Whether that project was successful or even worse, a failure, then it's a very uncomfortable situation to be in a call with Wizata.
When the penny drops. No, I think that's 3 good lists. So know your why, define the KPIs, and not get called into the vendor lock and tied into pretty names and great sales pitches. And I guess that's the really exciting thing at the moment. The space from where I'm viewing is really primed for disruption. There's tons of white space, and we're seeing companies that are disrupting, specifically within the MES space. And that's kind of where we operate most, is that, you know, you've got the huge vendors that have been there since God was a boy, you know, huge service contracts tied in, as you say, everything has to go back to the vendor for any customization. And then we're seeing the smaller companies with that more agile, nimble ability, low code, you know, simple for operators to change. So I think there's definitely an appreciation, Filip, for companies not getting tied into that longer contracts and not necessarily just going to, you know, the Gartner leaders in the space, but maybe looking at some of the smaller players.
Absolutely. I mean, the very fact that we exist, you know, is testament to the fact that we exist in the industry where there's very powerful incumbents is testament to the excellence of work, if you will. And not only there's other competitors of ours, of course.
Yeah. No, it's good. And look, we're getting close to the end. So just wanted to kind of get your take on the next 2 points, Filip. So Industry 4.0, it's a buzzword. We all know it, you know, been around since 2010, 2012, whenever. What do you think the industry looks like over the next 5 years? What's your kind of crystal ball thoughts on where we go to within the next kind of 5 years under the umbrella term 4.0?
Yeah. So very good question. So what I think and hope is going to happen is that I've mentioned earlier that a lot of companies have legacy systems that are kind of siloed off. And they have different data. What I'm hoping to see is a move to a more unified and standardized way to treat, store, and utilize data, right? Call upon query data. That's something that also goes hand in hand with an increased connectedness of the assets and the machines in factories. And that's where I think we're going to be going in the next 5 years, and I look forward to seeing that. Because that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think that's
that's good. And look, where does, we all know the milestones of, you know, the different industrial processes, industrial milestones that got us to 4.0. What does Industry 5.0 look like to you, Filip? What are your thoughts on the 5th industrial revolution?
On the 5th one, that's a good question.
On the spot, I appreciate.
Yeah, exactly. So apart from what I've already mentioned in the next 5-year change, I think Industry 5.0 we'll see. We already see that, to be honest. But I think we might see more automation.
Yeah.
Right. And this automation will be highly leveraging the things that we are implementing in Industry 4.0. Automation has been with us for a while, but now we're reaching a quite a more advanced level of automation where we can use AI to send commands back, and commands that are faster and more accurate at times. And that's very important, and I think that's what we're going to see in Industry 5.0. Sorry, certainly other emerging technologies like AR, maybe VR, definitely more advanced digital twins, and that's something very interesting. So yeah, that's where I see Industry 5.0 coming.
It's going to be interesting if we look back. Depends how well this conversation will age, Filip, on those points. And I guess nobody saw maybe the advancement of AI as quite aggressive as it's been, especially in the mainstream over the last kind of 6-9 months. So
that's another thing. That's a very good point. Sorry to interrupt you, but because it's something that I've been thinking about and mulling over. Right, ChatGPT is it's wild, right? So and it allows people to use very stupid prompts to get very important and relatively good information, which is going to improve over time. We might even see something like that entering into the industry, right? Tools and technologies which sort of an AI assistant rather than using drag and drop functions, which are very, very easy to use today, might see something easier than that, right? A prompt. Hey, how's my factory doing right now? I mean, give me a breakdown and what should I do and how to improve it, right?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating space, and this is where I was keen to chat with you. You're really tuned into what some of the emerging tech is doing, and tell everyone what the Wizata actually stands for. You mentioned to me before we hit record, but I think it's good that people get an idea.
Sure. So Wizata stands for wizard and data, right? Together they make Wizata. I guess we're wizards of data.
Wizards of data. I like it. Well, look, Filip, it's been great chatting today. Super keen to have you on the podcast and for you to share your insights. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me. Absolutely, Daniel. Thanks for the opportunity once again. And whenever you want, I am available. Yeah, sounds good. Cheers. Cheers.